Hello and welcome to the ERUA Open Science module on repositories. My name is Max Heber and this module, Repositories and Introduction, was developed in collaboration with my colleague Gabriel Schneider. We will first find out what a repository is, what different types there are and how they differ. Then we will explain why we recommend the use of repositories. Depending on your research and your data, there are different repositories to choose from. We will show you where to find the right repository and how to recognize it as such. Once you have decided on a repository, you can publish your data. We'll show you what you need to keep in mind when doing so. Finally, we give you some hints for further reading as well as concrete links to help you apply what you have learned in practice. A repository is a storage device for digital objects. In the context of science, it is about scholarly materials. These can be different types of objects. Examples are research data or other scientific publications like journal articles. In this module, we focus on two key elements of the open science movement: research data and open access text publications. Repositories are accessible via the internet and in most cases can be visited through a web browser. Users can then search the repository, access or download data, or publish their own content. Basically, we can distinguish between three different types of repositories. Besides content orientation: institutional repositories, generic repositories, and domain-specific repositories. An institutional repository is a repository that is operated by an institution and offers its service to members of this institution. This can be, for example, universities, colleges, or non-university research institutions. The holdings of such a service are very heterogeneous, as data sets from the various disciplines of an institution can be published and stored here. The repository is designed to meet the needs of the researchers working at the institution. Examples of institutional repositories are Condata, the University of Konstanz's research data repository, and COPS, the University of Konstanz's repository for open access documents. Publishing is usually only possible for members of the respective institution. Contact your institution's library to find out which repositories are available at your institution. Domain-specific repositories enable the publication of data and other scientific outputs from specific scientific disciplines. This leads to a relatively homogeneous content collection. This often makes domain-specific repositories a good place to start searching for data. Such a service can be strongly geared to the needs of the respective community through its focus. An example of a subject-specific research data repository would be the MoveBank data repository for animal tracking data, an archive for publications and preprints in physics, mathematics, and computer science in particular. In addition to these two categories, generic repositories also exist. These are not restricted to specific disciplines or affiliations with institutions, and thus provide a general access point. An example of a generic repository is Zenodo. But why should you use repositories at all? Let's first turn our attention to repositories for open access text publications. Open access repositories usually allow you to post your publication as an open access version either immediately after publication or after an embargo period has expired. In many cases, this will give your publication a higher reach, thus a better visibility and more frequent citations. In addition, many repositories offer the possibility of keeping their users up to date on new publications in specific subjects. Repositories also often make it easy to create publication lists or reference information for future publications. Moreover, publications and repositories can be used to determine the citation rate and the impact of a publication via services such as Inspire or Google Scholar. With regards to research data, it should be noted that publications via research data repositories provide increased transparency in science, as the data underlying publications, well, this also applies to the humanities, are made findable. This also tends to increase the efficiency of science, as at least when data are made openly available, other researchers can reuse the data for their own projects. This can lead to saving money, as the process of collecting and preparing data for scientific work can be a costly endeavor. Furthermore, the A publication of data can, at least in some cases, make scientific results reproducible. Other researchers can use the data and use the same methods as you did to come to the same results, validating your research. But how do you find a suitable repository for your open access publication or research data? Let's first look at open access. OpenDOR is a directory of open access repositories with currently about 5,900 listed repositories. You can search OpenDOR by repository type, content, and country. A good possibility to search research data is offered by re3data.org with currently about 2,900 indexed repositories. Here you can search research data repositories. Using a generic search engine, you can search for terms and narrow down the results using many different filters. This allows you to best customize the hits for your needs. Another interesting search option is the option to search repositories based on their subject focus. To make it easier for you to publish via repositories, we have collected some criteria you should look out for when publishing. Let's start again with open access repositories. Make sure to use trustworthy repositories. Use OpenDOR for this purpose. Domain-specific repositories are preferable, as they are better known in the community. If you want to publish a text directly open access and have to pay publication fees, find out if there is a publication fund at your institution that could, at least partially, reimburse you, or if this is possible on the part of the research funder. Sherpa Juliet can assist you here. If immediate open access is not possible, find out when your publisher allows self-archiving, that is, when the embargo period of their publication expires. Sherpa Romeo can assist you here. When posting to the repository, provide your text with comprehensive metadata such as author information, title, and publication date, so that it is easy to find in sites. Also be sure to use IDs or make sure the repository embeds them for you, both as far as the author is concerned, for which ORCID is very suitable, and as far as the publication is concerned. Here, DOIs are the most common identifiers. DOI stands for Digital Object Identifiers, which is a persistent identifier. Now let's move on to research data. In general, you should submit your data to a subject-specific repository from your scientific discipline. These services are set up for datasets guarantee the best possible handling of the data. Furthermore, the repository may already be well known in the community. This increases the chance that your data can be found and reused by other scientists in your field. Once you have decided on a repository, you should check the guidelines of the service. Make sure that your data sets fit to the repository's data scope in terms of data volume and content. If you want to make your data as openly accessible as possible, you should check what options the repository offers you here. You can often see this in the guidelines or by looking at datasets that have already been published. Pay attention to the licenses under which the other content was published. Depending on what sensitive content your data contains, it may be relevant in which country the repository server is located. Find out about this by searching the website of the repository and, if necessary, asking the operator of the service. Various certifications for research data repositories have now become widely accepted. One of the most prominent examples is the Core Trust Seal. This seal attests to the trustworthiness of a repository. If the service you choose has been certified, you can be confident that your data will be stored and preserved for the long term. If your data was created in the course of a project that was financed by third-party funding, this may be accompanied by conditions regarding publication. You should definitely take these into account. Finally, we would like to provide you with some suggestions for further reading. Detailed information on open access repositories and open access in general can be found at openaccess.network. Detailed information on research data can be found at Forschungsdateninfo. For a further deepening, you'll find here the sources of the present module, as well as the image-related sources here. Thank you very much for your attention and for your participation in this module.